I want you to picture something. It is 3 o'clock in the morning. Valentine's Day. The temperature fell below 0 degrees and the snow is coming down so hard you cannot see the house that is 10 feet behind you. You are lying in that snow. You are wearing a hospital gown and paper slippers. Your surgical stitches have been torn open. You are bleeding. And in your arms, pressed against your chest because your body heat is the only thing keeping her alive, is your daughter. She is 3 days old. She has stopped crying. When a newborn goes silent in the cold, it is not because she has calmed down. It is because she is running out of time. The people who put you there are inside that house right now. Warm. Safe. Laughing, probably. And they have no idea. Not one of them has the faintest clue. That in exactly 4 hours and 12 minutes, you will inherit $2.3 billion. And every single one of them will wish they had never learned your name. My name is Claire Whitfield. This is not a work of fiction. This is the true account of how I went from dying in a snowbank, with nothing to my name but a torn hospital bracelet and a baby who was slipping away, to walking into a boardroom as the owner of everything those people had ever built. It is the story of what happens when you underestimate a woman. Stay with me all the way to the end. Because the moment 4.2 million people watched the Hargrove family realize who I truly was, that moment alone was worth every bruise, every forged document, every single thing they took from me. But what made it legendary was this. They signed a consent form on their way into that boardroom. They did not read it. They never read anything. That is what destroyed them. If you believe in justice, real, earned, documented justice, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what would you have done in my shoes? And before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to hear from you. And do not forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. There is a kind of grief that has no name. It is not the grief of losing someone to death. It is the grief of realizing that the life you believed you were living was never real. I have experienced both kinds. The second one is worse. 3 days before that night in the snow, I was in room 214 at Mercy Regional Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio. My body had just survived an emergency C-section that the attending physician later told me came within minutes of ending very differently. My daughter was alive and breathing. I was alive and breathing. I had been married to Nathan Hargrove for 3 years. Nathan had not come to the hospital. Not once. Not in 54 hours. I had been counting. There is something deeply human about counting the hours someone does not show up. It is the mind's way of building a case against hope. 54 hours. I had nursed our daughter. I had named her Lily. I had taken the photographs every new mother takes alone in the middle of the night when the ward is quiet and the world outside doesn't know yet that something sacred has just entered it. I told myself he was at the office. Nathan was always at the office. His family's company, Hargrove Capital, Real Estate Holdings, Commercial Development, Old Ohio money with Georgia roots, was his first love. I had always known that. I had accepted it. What I did not know, what I could not have guessed in 54 hours of counting, was that Nathan was at a restaurant called the Meridian Club that night. A private dining room. With a woman named Danielle. And Danielle was pregnant. My best friend Patrice worked in the radiology department 2 floors below me. She was the one who came to tell me. She came in on her break at 10:45 at night with her phone facing down, which is how I knew before she even sat down that whatever she was about to show me was going to be catastrophic. She turned the phone over. Nathan had posted on Instagram. The caption read, "Starting over with the woman I was always meant to be with. New chapter. No more pretending." There were 62,000 likes. I sat there looking at that number for what felt like a very long time. 62,000 people had celebrated the public announcement of my husband's affair. 62,000 people had hit a heart on the photograph of the man who had not come to see his own daughter. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. The screen flashed for a moment. W. Whitfield. Private. I did not answer it. I was too shattered to answer anything. I would not know until weeks later that the call I just missed was the one that would have changed everything. But God, or fate, or whatever it is you believe in, has a way of saving things for exactly the right moment. For hours after that missed call, the door to room 214 was thrown open. And the woman who walked through it intended to finish what the last 3 years had started. To understand what happened in that hospital room, you need to understand what the 3 years before it looked like. I grew up in Delphos, Ohio. Population just under 7,000. My mother, Sandra Whitfield, worked the overnight shift at a packaging facility for 22 years. She raised me alone in a 2-bedroom house on Findlay Road that had a furnace that worked about 60% of the time. We were not poor the way people on television are poor. We were poor the way most of America is poor. Quietly, resourcefully, and without anyone making a documentary about it. My mother did not talk about her family. When I was 7 I asked her once where her parents were and she said simply, "Some people build walls too high to climb back over." I did not understand that then. I do now. I got a partial scholarship to Ohio State. Worked at a coffee shop on High Street for all 4 years. That is where I met Nathan Hargrove. He was charming in that particular way that men from wealthy families learn to be. Effortlessly generous with other people's attention. He had a laugh that filled a room. He told me on our 3rd date that I was the most genuine person he had ever met. He said his family was full of people who performed for each other and that being with me felt like breathing real air. I believed him. I was 24 years old and I believed every word. We were married at the Hargrove estate in New Albany 18 months later. I wore my mother's wedding dress, taken in at the waist. The Hargroves wore couture. Margaret Hargrove, Nathan's mother, made her opinion of me clear before the reception was over. She pulled me aside near the rose garden and said, very pleasantly, as if she were complimenting the centerpieces, "We appreciate what you are, dear. But do understand that some rooms in this house you will never belong in." That was the template for the next 3 years. There was the Thanksgiving where Margaret seated me at the children's table. Not by accident. Deliberately. She told the caterer I had requested it. I had not. There was the charity gala where she introduced me to the mayor of Columbus as Nathan's arrangement. I smiled. I always smiled. There was Nathan's sister, Ashley, who ran a lifestyle brand with 400,000 followers and who live-streamed every family gathering as content. Ashley had a gift for narrating my presence in a way that was technically friendly and functionally devastating. She would pan to me at dinner and say things like, "And here is Claire, still figuring out the fish fork." Her followers loved it. They loved her. I became a recurring character in her content. The fish fork woman. The arrangement. And Nathan. Nathan who had once said being with me felt like breathing real air. Nathan who now looked through me at family dinners. Who had stopped sleeping in our shared room by the 2nd year. Who, when I told him I was pregnant, said, "Are you certain it's mine?" and then left the room before I could answer. The DNA test he demanded came back at 99.9%. He never apologized. So that was the 3 years. That was the marriage. A slow and deliberate dismantling of a person, conducted by professionals. And now, at 2:15 in the morning on February 15th, they had come to finish the job. The door flew open. Margaret Hargrove entered first. She was in a full-length coat at 2 in the morning, her pearls on, her posture immaculate. Behind her came Gerald, Nathan's father, the kind of man who fills a doorway not because of size but because of the absolute certainty that every room belongs to him. Then Ashley, phone already raised and recording. And last, Danielle. Nathan's Danielle. One hand resting on her pregnant belly, wearing a smile I can only describe as the smile of someone who has already won. Dr. Patricia Owens, my obstetrician, stepped forward. Visiting hours ended at 9. This patient needs rest. Gerald Hargrove handed her a folder without even looking at her. We have documentation from Children's Services and a psychiatric evaluation. The patient is exhibiting signs of postpartum psychosis. We are here to protect the child. The documents were forged. We would prove that later. But right then, at 2 in the morning, 3 days post-surgery, still on pain medication, watching my best friend Patrice frozen in the doorway, I did not know that yet. What I knew was that Ashley was live streaming. That her phone was pointed at me. That the caption she had typed read, "The truth about my brother's wife." Live. No edits. No filter. 400,000 people were waking up to watch. Margaret walked to my bedside. She spoke quietly, which was somehow worse than if she had shouted. We know about the things you have been hiding, Claire. The instability. The history. Nathan has been protecting you for 3 years and now he is done. Sign the papers and this ends cleanly. Fight us and we will make sure you never hold that baby unsupervised again. She put divorce papers in my hand. My hand that still had an 4-line in it. I looked at Danielle. She tilted her head and said, very softly, did you really think someone like you could hold a Hargrove child? Ashley narrated for her followers. She's not saying anything, everyone. 400,000 of you watching in real time. I signed the papers. I was terrified. I was medicated. I was alone in every way a person can be alone. I signed them. They left. Ashley ended the stream. The last comment she read aloud before cutting off was, she looks like she's already defeated. She was right. What none of them knew was that Dr. Owens had been recording from her personal phone since the moment that door opened. She was a mandated reporter who took her oath seriously enough to record it on a Tuesday night at 2 in the morning in a hospital room in Columbus, Ohio. That recording would matter more than anything else I owned. But I did not know that yet. I only knew that I had nothing left. The next morning, February 15th, I took an Uber to the Hargrove estate in New Albany. I had no car. Nathan had handled all the finances throughout our marriage, which I had accepted as a sign of partnership and now understood was a mechanism of control. Lily was in a hospital-issue car seat in the back beside me. 3 days old. The UV light from the hospital for her jaundice had done its work. She was stable. She was wearing a hat the size of a coffee cup. The Hargrove estate is a 12,000 square foot federal colonial set back from a private lane behind stone pillars. I had spent 3 years in it. I had never once felt welcome in it. My belongings had been packed into garbage bags and left at the base of the front steps. Not boxes. Garbage bags. Inside, I found that my clothing had been ruined. Someone had poured bleach into the closet. My books were piled in the utility room. The photographs of my mother had been removed from every frame. The frames were still hanging on the walls, empty. Ashley was in the formal sitting room wearing my mother's pearl earrings. She was taking a selfie. I said, those belong to me. She looked at me with genuine amusement. They belong to a woman who died with nothing. Which means they belong to whoever picks them up. She put her phone down. You know what's interesting about you, Claire? After 3 years you still don't understand the basic rule. The rule is, some people inherit the world and some people watch them do it. You were always the second kind. I did not answer. I gathered what I could carry. Then Margaret's voice came over the intercom. Claire. Main hall. All of us. Now. What happened in that hall I will not describe in full because there are some things that, even now, require a breath before they can be spoken. I will tell you what is relevant. There were 4 private security men I had never seen before. There was a command to kneel. There was my refusal. There was Lily being taken from my arms. There was a moment when I heard her cry and my body responded the way a mother's body responds, without thought, without strategy, just forward, and that forward motion met stone stairs. I fell down 7 steps. The front door was opened. The blizzard came in. Margaret's last words to me were, this is exactly where garbage belongs. And then the door closed. I do not know how long I lay there. Long enough for the snow to begin covering my legs. Long enough to feel the warmth leaving my fingers. Long enough for Lily to go quiet in a way that terrified me more than any sound she had ever made. Please, I whispered to her. Please stay with me. You are all I have. Please. I closed my eyes. And then there were headlights. 3 black Escalades, moving through the storm like they owned the weather. They stopped. Doors opened before the vehicles had fully stopped moving. And a man in a Tom Ford suit stepped into the blizzard carrying an umbrella as though this were simply an errand he needed to run. He knelt down beside me in the snow. Miss Claire Sandra Whitfield, he said. Thank God we found you. My name is Richard Alderman. Your grandfather sent me. I could barely form words. My grandfather is dead. No, he said gently. He is not. His name is William Elias Whitfield. He has been looking for you for 2 years. And right now, his medical team needs to get your daughter warm. Behind him, paramedics in Whitfield Foundation uniforms were already moving. "Your daughter's temperature is 94.3 degrees, one said, reading from a device. "We have approximately 8 minutes. They wrapped Lily first. Then me. And as they carried us to the warmth of that vehicle, I heard Richard Alderman on his phone, his voice entirely steady. "She is found. Both alive. En route to Whitfield Medical. Tell William." There was a pause. Then. "I understand. I will tell her." He did not tell me then. He waited until Lily and I were safe and warm and the doctors had confirmed we would both survive. Then he told me. And the world as I had understood it ceased to exist. I woke up at 11:15 in the morning in a room that was nothing like Mercy Regional. Whitfield Private Medical Center occupied the top 3 floors of a building in downtown Columbus. The room I was in had floor-to-ceiling windows, original artwork, and a team of 6 specialists who had apparently been waiting for me to open my eyes. Lily was in the neonatal suite 1 floor up. Her temperature had been restored. Her color was coming back. Dr. Owens, who had, I later learned, resigned from Mercy Regional that morning and accepted a position here, was with her. Richard Alderman sat beside my bed with a leather folder in his lap and the expression of a man who has been rehearsing what he is about to say for longer than he would like. "Your mother's name before she was Sandra Whitfield of Delphos, Ohio," he began, "was Sandra Eleanor Whitfield of Columbus." He told me the story. My grandfather, William Elias Whitfield, had built what became Whitfield Global Holdings from a single commercial real estate company in 1971. By the time I was born, it had grown into a 40-company enterprise spanning real estate, medical facilities, clean energy, and manufacturing, valued, at present, at $2.3 billion. My mother had left home at 19 after an argument about my father, James Morgan, whom William believed was a manipulative young man interested in the Whitfield name and nothing else. He was right. My father left when I was 2. But my mother was too proud to go back. And William was too proud to come forward. 2 stubborn, loving people separated by a door neither one would open first. My mother died 5 years ago. A car accident on Interstate 70 in the middle of February. She died with nothing, as Ashley had said. She died not knowing that her father had tracked her quietly for 20 years, watching from a distance he hated, held back by a pride that he later described as the greatest failure of his life. After she died, he found me. 2 years ago, just after my wedding. He watched what they did to me. He had cameras on the Hargrove estate. He had a security detail assigned to me. He saw every dinner I was made to serve. Every public humiliation. Every evening I walked back to the guest wing while Nathan stayed in the main house. Why didn't he help me? My voice was barely above a whisper. Richard's answer was careful. He wanted to. Desperately. But his legal team, myself included, advised him to wait. We needed an airtight trust. Something the Hargroves could never touch or contest. Something that would protect you not just from them but from anyone who might come after you once the inheritance became known. We were building a fortress, Claire. We just didn't build it fast enough. He handed me an envelope. The handwriting on the outside was my grandfather's. Elegant, slightly trembling. The handwriting of an old man who had held a pen every day of his life. I opened it. My dearest Claire. If you are reading this, I did not make it to you in time. I am more sorry for that than any words I am capable of writing. I was on a flight from London when Richard called me. I watched the security footage on my phone on the tarmac before we were cleared to land. I watched them carry you out. I watched you fall. I watched Lily go still in the snow. I am an old man who has made money his life's work. I have negotiated with governments. I have outlasted recessions. I have never once in my adult life felt powerless. That video made me feel powerless. And I believe it broke my heart. Not as a figure of speech. But in the way that old hearts actually break. Everything I have built is yours. All of it. $2.3 billion. 40 companies. Properties in 14 states and 6 countries. It is in a trust that no one can touch, no one can contest, and no one can take from you. I should have given you this years ago. I should have given you your mother years ago. I was too proud and you paid for my pride, and I am sorrier than you will ever fully know. Show them what a Whitfield is. Show them what we are made of. And please, when you look at Lily, Please tell her that her great-grandfather loved her before he ever got to hold her. With all my love. Grandfather William. The trust became active at 7:03 that morning. The moment William's death was recorded. At 3 in the morning, when they pushed me down those stairs, I was exactly what they said I was. A woman with nothing. No money. No power. No name anyone recognized. But as I lay in that snow, the clock was ticking toward 7. And they had no idea. Richard gave me a moment. Then. As of this morning, you are the chairwoman and chief executive officer of Whitfield Global Holdings. The board has been briefed. Your office is ready whenever you are. I looked at Lily through the window of the neonatal suite. She was sleeping. Her tiny chest rising and falling. I turned back to Richard. Tell me, I said. Everything about the Hargroves' finances. And so he did. What Richard showed me over the next 3 days was not just the shape of a family in decline. It was the anatomy of a crime. Hargrove Capital was carrying $67 million in debt across 11 properties. Gerald Hargrove had diverted $9.4 million from employee retirement accounts over 6 years. He had disguised it as consulting fees paid to a shell company he controlled. Nathan had embezzled an additional $3.2 million to finance his life with Danielle. Ashley's lifestyle brand was built almost entirely on purchased followers, undisclosed sponsored content, and one other thing. She had been misrepresenting her age to modeling contracts. Her contract specified women under 30. Ashley was 34. And her agency, the one that had made her, the one she talked about on every live stream, had been acquired by Whitfield Global 3 weeks earlier through a subsidiary. She did not know that yet. Margaret had her own problem. 5 boutique locations. All in buildings owned by Whitfield Properties. Her leases were up for renewal in 39 days. She was also sitting on 2 years of unreported income. And Danielle. Danielle's real name was Danny Carmichael. She had a record in Tennessee. 2 prior engagements, both ending in the disappearance of significant funds and a prosthetic pregnancy. The ultrasound she had shown Nathan had been purchased on a forum for $90. Richard looked at me across the conference table. You could leave tonight, he said quietly. Take Lily to London. We have offices there. You never have to see any of them again. They are already beginning to collapse on their own. I thought about it. I genuinely did. For one day, I thought about the life I could build in a city where no one knew my name or what they had done to it. Then the lawsuit arrived. The Hargroves had filed an emergency custody petition for Lily. They were claiming I had abandoned her. They had fabricated witness statements. They had a new psychiatric report from a doctor in their pocket. And the judge assigned to the case, a man named Holbrook, played golf every Sunday with Gerald Hargrove. The mercy I had been considering evaporated. Richard, I said. How long do I need to be ready? 8 weeks, he said. To do this properly. Then let's begin. The 8 weeks looked like this. Week 1. Healing. Physical therapy on my shoulder. New stitches. Learning to hold Lily while reading quarterly reports. Richard taught me how to read a financial statement. I took notes like the student I had always been. Week 2. Education. I sat in on every division head meeting at Whitfield Global as a silent observer. I asked one sharp question per meeting. By the end of the week, the department heads had stopped looking at me with polite skepticism and started looking at me the way people look at someone who might actually know something. Week 3. Transformation. I am going to be honest about this because dishonesty about it would be a kind of cowardice. I had spent 3 years being told I did not look like I belonged in those rooms. I decided to make belonging undeniable. Not for vanity. As a strategic instrument. I bought 3 Tom Ford suits. My hair was professionally done. Platinum balayage, clean and cool. I hired a media coach. She told me, stand like the room already belongs to you. Because it does. Week 4. Power. Krav Maga 3 times a week. Negotiation workshops with Richard. Meetings with the company's legal team, learning not just the law but how to use it. I practiced my boardroom face in the mirror every morning until it was impenetrable. Weeks 5 and 6. The architecture of consequences. Whitfield Global quietly acquired the debt from Hargrove Capital's 11 creditors. A forensic accounting team opened a full audit of Gerald's pension diversion. We prepared IRS documentation packages for both Gerald and Margaret. We had evidence. We had enough to bury them 3 times over. We were simply deciding the order. Week 7. The first move. On April 3, a blog called Capital I published a story under the headline, Lifestyle Brand Built on Lies. The truth about Ashley Hargrove. The story included her real age, documented by a copy of her driver's license. It included before and after photographs demonstrating surgical procedures she had publicly denied. It included financial records showing her parents funded approximately 70% of the lifestyle her brand pretended she had earned. And it included screenshots of contracts she had signed certifying she was under 30. By noon, the story had been viewed 400,000 times. By 2 in the afternoon, Sephora had pulled their partnership. 3 other brands followed before dinner. At 4:17, Ashley went live on Instagram, crying, her makeup running, insisting it was all fabricated. Her comments section had already turned. At 5:02, she received an email from her modeling agency informing her that her contract had been terminated due to misrepresentation. She had no idea the agency was now mine. Ashley called Margaret screaming. Margaret called a lawyer. The lawyer asked what assets were available. Margaret went quiet. Phase 1 was complete. On April 5, Nathan received a package at the estate. Inside was a complete file on Danny Carmichael. Her real name, her criminal history, her 2 previous fraudulent engagements in Tennessee and Georgia, the digital metadata on the ultrasound photograph she had shown him, and a handwritten note that read, Nathan. You made me feel like a fool for 3 years. Now you know how it feels. Check what she's wearing under that dress. A friend. The confrontation that followed was witnessed by 3 household staff members who later gave sworn statements. Danielle ran. Nathan grabbed her arm. The prosthetic belly came loose and fell to the floor. Nathan Hargrove looked at that silicone form on the hardwood floor of his family home for a long time. Gerald called the police. Danielle was taken into custody on the outstanding warrant from Tennessee. In Nathan's study that night, I watched through the estate security feed as he sat alone with a glass of bourbon and his phone. He scrolled to my old number. The one that was disconnected. He held the phone for a long time without dialing. Margaret came in. Don't, she said. Nathan said, maybe we were wrong about her. Margaret said, she's probably in a shelter somewhere. She doesn't have the capacity to come after a family like ours. I watched that exchange 3 times that night. I am not going to pretend it felt good. The grief for what that marriage could have been, for the man I had believed Nathan was, that grief was real. It had always been real. But grief is not the same thing as mercy. And I was done extending mercy to people who had never extended it to me. The custody hearing happened before the boardroom. I want to tell you that part honestly because not everything went the way it should have. Judge Holbrook awarded temporary custody to Nathan and his family pending a 30-day evaluation. He cited the absence of concrete admissible evidence. He cited the Hargrove stable, established household. He did not mention that he had played golf with Gerald Hargrove 47 times in the past 4 years. I will tell you what it felt like to have Lily taken from my arms in a courthouse. I had $2.3 billion and I could not hold my own daughter. Money does not fix a corrupted system. Power does. That night I called Richard from the Whitfield penthouse in Columbus. The crib in the corner of my room was empty. No more patience, I said. No more following their rules. Schedule the boardroom. April 12th. I want all of them in that room. Richard was quiet for a moment. Then. Are you certain? I looked at the empty crib. Complete annihilation, I said. Yes. We worked through the night. I called Dr. Owens. She was afraid. I told her I was afraid too and that we were going to do it regardless. She agreed to testify. My investigator located Ashley's Instagram live from the hospital. It had never been deleted. It was archived on Instagram's own servers and was therefore legally obtainable as a public broadcast. We obtained it through proper legal channels. 3 former Hargrove household staff members came forward with sworn statements after we reached out through a foundation contact. They had been afraid to speak while employed there. They were no longer employed there. We filed an emergency motion the morning of April 12 with the new evidence, a motion to recuse Judge Holbrook citing documented conflict of interest, and a request for immediate emergency review. Then I put on my white Tom Ford suit. I put on red lipstick. I put on my grandfather's signet ring, which Richard had brought me the day I woke up. I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. Then I went to meet the Hargroves for the last time. The Hargrove family arrived at Whitfield Global's Midtown Manhattan offices at 2 in the afternoon. They came in Margaret's backup car, a leased Lexus. Their Mercedes had been repossessed 2 weeks earlier. Gerald's suit was slightly too large. He had lost weight from the stress. Margaret's jewelry was costume. She had sold the real pieces to cover back rent on the boutiques. They believed they were here for a contract meeting. A $75 million government infrastructure contract that Whitfield Global controlled as a federal intermediary. That contract was the last thing that could save Hargrove Capital. In the elevator, Margaret straightened her spine and said, "We are Hargroves. We have been in this state for 4 generations. They will show us the respect that is due." The receptionist walked them to conference room A, floor-to-ceiling windows. A 20-seat table. 8 board members already seated. At the far end of the room, the CEO's chair was turned toward the window. They took their seats. Gerald cleared his throat. "We appreciate the opportunity to." The chair turned. "Hello, Gerald." I sat in that chair in my white suit with my platinum hair and my grandfather's ring and my red lipstick, and I watched their faces register what their minds could not immediately process. Margaret made a sound I had never heard from her. Gerald's hand hit the table. Ashley dropped her phone. It cracked on the marble floor. She did not reach for it. Nathan went very still in the way people go still when the ground moves beneath them. I stood up slowly and walked around the table. "My name is Claire Eleanor Whitfield. I am the Chief Executive Officer and Chairwoman of Whitfield Global Holdings. I am the sole heir and granddaughter of William Elias Whitfield, who built this company from nothing and who left it to me, along with $2.3 billion, effective 7:03 in the morning on February 15th. I picked up the remote on the table. The screen behind me came to life. February 15th. 3 in the morning. The security footage played. Every second of it. Ashley live streaming in the hospital room. The forged documents. The march through the estate. The moment Lily was taken from my arms. The stairs. The blood on the snow. The door closing. The board members who had not known watched in absolute silence. One of them set down his pen. At 3 in the morning, I said, "You put me in that snow." At that moment, I was exactly what you called me. Nobody. Nothing. Disposable. At 7:03 that same morning, I became a billionaire. You simply were not informed. Next slide. Gerald's financial records. Every diversion from the pension fund, date-stamped and documented. The wire transfers to his shell company. Whitfield Global acquired $61 million of Hargrove Capital's debt 3 weeks ago. I am calling it due today. You have 48 hours to pay in full or I take the properties. Additionally, the FBI received this documentation this morning. Expect an arrest within the week. Gerald's face had gone the color of old plaster. Next slide. Margaret's boutiques. 5 locations. All in Whitfield-owned buildings. Your leases expire in 8 days. I will not be renewing them. The lock changes take effect at 5 this evening. I am also filing for the $460,000 in back rent, plus damages. Margaret gripped the edge of the table. And the IRS received your income documentation yesterday morning. Prepare for an audit. Next slide. Ashley. Before and after images. Age documents. Contract language. Your modeling contracts are terminated effective today. The agency you have built your brand around. Whitfield Global acquired it 3 weeks ago. As its owner, I am also suing you for the theft of my mother's pearl earrings, which I have documented in this photograph you posted yourself. I am attaching a replacement value of $100,000. Ashley began to cry. Quietly at first, and then not quietly. Next slide. Nathan. The text messages. The bet with his college roommates, the full chain. Every message, every dollar amount, every laughing emoji. Then his own embezzlement records. Then. And the custody of Lily. New evidence had been submitted to the family court that morning. Dr. Owen's recording from the hospital, obtained through proper medical review channels. Ashley's live stream, which her own public posting had made legally accessible. 3 sworn staff statements. A motion to recuse Judge Holbrook citing documented financial ties to the Hargrove family. An emergency hearing is set for tomorrow with a new judge. You will not see Lily again. Ever. Nathan lunged across the table. 2 security officers had him on the floor before he reached me. I did not move. He looked up at me from the floor. You've destroyed everything. I crouched down so he could hear me without the room hearing me. You destroyed everything the night you made a bet on my life. I just made sure the world saw it. I stood up. There is one more thing. I picked up the remote. The non-disclosure agreement you signed on your way into this building. Please direct your attention to Clause 47. Media and recording consent for business proceedings. The screen showed the document they had each signed at reception. They had signed without reading. They had always signed without reading. This meeting has been streaming live. You currently have 4.2 million viewers. The comment feed appeared on a secondary screen. It was moving too fast to read. Margaret whispered. You cannot. You once forced me to sign divorce papers while I was on pain medication with an 4 in my arm. You always read what you sign, Margaret. Always. Security escorted them out. On the street below, 18 members of the press were waiting. 2 FBI field agents made the arrests before the cars arrived. On Twitter, 3 topics trended globally within the hour. Number 1. Claire Whitfield. Number 2. Hargrove family exposed. Number 3. She came back as the owner. The emergency custody hearing was the following morning. With Dr. Owens on the stand, with the hospital recording played in full, with 3 sworn staff statements and a motion to recuse granted, the new judge took 40 minutes to render her decision. Full custody restored. The Hargrove family barred from contact pending criminal proceedings. When they brought Lily to me in that courtroom, I held her and I did not say anything for a long time. There was nothing that needed to be said. 6 months later. Gerald Hargrove convicted on federal embezzlement charges. Sentenced to 11 years. Nathan took a plea, 5 years, and signed away all parental rights. Ashley avoided criminal charges but her career was finished. She moved back to her parents' house, which was by then heavily mortgaged and soon to be the bank's. Margaret is on payment plans with the IRS. She works now. Something she had not done in 31 years. Danielle, whose real name was Danny Carmichael, is serving 8 years in Tennessee. The first thing I built after Lily came home was the Whitfield Foundation for Family Safety. Starting endowment, $50 million. Services, legal representation, emergency shelter, therapy, and job training for survivors of family-based abuse. In its first year, the foundation assisted 2,400 families. Whitfield Global's stock rose 38% in the 12 months following the boardroom live stream. 3 new market divisions were launched. The company now employs over 12,000 people, and every major employment decision I make, I think of the pension fund Gerald stole from his own workers. And I think of what it cost. I think of my grandfather, who watched from a distance for 2 years and could not get to me in time. I think of my mother, who spent her whole life protecting a pride that kept her from being loved. I think of the woman in the snow who believed she was no one. People ask me sometimes, do you regret it? The live stream, the exposure, all of it being so public. I always ask them back. Regret it for whom? In the 14 months since that boardroom, more than 600 women have reached out to the foundation telling me their own version of this story. Not the billionaire part. The other part. The part where someone who was supposed to love them decided instead to make them small. The part where they signed something they should not have signed because they were frightened and alone. The part where they lay in their own version of the snow and wondered whether to keep going. I did not do what I did for revenge. Revenge is about your pain. What I did was about making sure they could not do it to anyone else. That is not the same thing. Not even close. The Hargroves were not unique. They were a pattern. A pattern of people who use wealth and reputation and legal systems to protect cruelty. My job was to turn the lights on so the pattern could be seen. I turned the lights on. So if you are listening to this right now and you are in your own winter, your own version of the snow, I need you to hear me say this clearly. You are not defined by what they called you. You are not the name they gave you in a moment they thought was permanent. Pain that does not kill you does not automatically make you stronger. That is a lie people tell to make suffering sound useful. But pain that you choose to metabolize, pain that you decide to understand and transform, that can make you into something no one saw coming. They threw me down those stairs because they believed I was nothing. They were not wrong about what I was at that moment. They were only wrong about what I was becoming. If this story reached something inside you, if it reminded you of your own strength, or gave you something you needed to hear, then please share it with someone who needs it too. Leave a comment below. Tell me your story, or tell me what you would have done in my shoes. Tell me where you are watching from. I read them. Every single one. Subscribe to this channel. Turn on notifications. Because the story we have for you next week is unlike anything you have ever heard. I promise you that. My name is Claire Whitfield. They called me garbage. I came back as the owner. And I am just getting started.